This is day 2 of the August 90 7-day retreat at Springwater. A lot of the questions that have come up have concerned feelings. Feelings of sadness, feelings of fear, feelings of anger. I haven't had the time to write them all down. People last time told me it's very helpful, since we don't communicate with each other here, to hear other people's questions. So the few that I have written down I will read. And then we'll go into this question, which is there for all the people who have talked about it and also for those who haven't talked about it. How does one meet these feelings? What does one do with them? How do I deal with them or approach them? Anger coming up, do I repress it because it gets me nowhere? Or look at it, or what? It seems endless. I see that thoughts sustain it. That thought, when seen, need not continue in that vein. Is that repression? On crying, I find that there are many inner voices or tapes, maybe even tapes that I've heard playing at this moment of tears welling up. One inner tape says, crying will just dig up more and more stuff that you will have to deal with. Won't get you anywhere. The other voice says, release it or discharge it. Then it'll get better. Unless that happens, there'll be no resolution. I'm confused. I've been feeling very sad. Should I stay with that feeling of sadness? Or think that confronting it, or think that comforting thoughts, thinking comforting thoughts will make me feel better? Should I stay with a feeling of sadness or think comforting thoughts, which will make me feel better? One person said, are there any feelings which are not the product of thought? And where does thought come from? I didn't write down the questions on fear which have come up several times. Feeling great fear before entering the room, in entering and sitting down and sitting there about to say something. Fear. Sadness. Anger. What to do with it. How to deal with it, as we usually put it. How to approach it. All of this way of putting it already implies, does it not, someone who has these feelings and could or should do something about them. And from the very outset, we are questioning this division. This inner division, which is so seemingly alive in all of us until we examine it. Examine it deeply. That there is someone who is the victim, the endurer, the sufferer, or just plain the owner, the haver of all of these feelings. Not only the owner of them, the endurer of them, but maybe the one who can change them, be rid of them, overcome them, or wallow in them. We're all brought up in this belief, which is not seen as a belief, it is seen as a reality, that there is an independently functioning I or me that has feelings and can do something about them, or maybe is the total victim of them, is helpless. And that usually gets visualized as the image of me, the identification with that, and then having what befalls me or has been triggered in me through usually outside events. Someone threatening me, someone making me angry, someone dying who was so close to me, so dear to me. Can one, at the very beginning of this retreat, question this division? Whether there is indeed an independent me that has these feelings and can do something about them, or should do something about them, is suffering them, is the victim of them, or the conqueror of them. Or whether, maybe, one doesn't know, but whether maybe there's a unitary process going on in this body-mind of every human being, of thought and feelings and emotions triggering each other, setting each other off. Thought setting off feeling, feeling setting off more thought, thought setting off more feeling. It gets complicated because there comes the conflict with the feelings, the conflict with the thoughts. I don't want to think this way, I don't want to feel this way. And more feelings are resulting out of the conflict. And then the red thread through this unitary process of thinking and feeling, emoting, and more thoughts and feelings, the red thread winding through all of this is me. Separate from this, somehow or other, more permanent than all of this stuff, more stable, albeit very shaky at times, enduring, and called into action. We're saying that this may all be thought, different levels, different strengths of thought, with different reinforcements from the past. We're putting it out, not as a dogma, but as something to examine, because all of us are enormously suffering from inner division. which does not remain in a division. It's projected onto the outside and results in almost constant clashes. Close friends, family, groups, countries. So, coming to the question of how to deal with sadness, anger, fear. In approaching this question, can one question the assumptions that there is a division inside and just wonder about what is happening? In a questioning frame of mind. Just to say, put aside the assumption that there's an I that is useless, it's so deep. But if it's questioned and wondered about, then maybe as it reveals itself, it can be seen here and there, glimpsed at first, quickly, briefly. Maybe as one gets into this whole thing of wondering and looking and listening, not defending oneself or making up stories about how one is or others are, and then putting one's faith and trust and attachment into these stories. That doesn't help in looking at all. It doesn't reveal anything. It only strengthens the storyline about us, which is already very strong. Can that also, since we're talking about it, mentioning it, can that be glimpsed? Not be convinced that it is so and take it over as an idea. We need no more ideas. We have enough. What we need is to see for ourselves what goes on in this body-mind from moment to moment. Actually. Not talk ourselves into it. One person said this, I'm so good at talking myself into something. And then it's very difficult to see whether it's really so. But person must have discovered some such process of talking oneself into it, or else one couldn't report about it. So to be, how do you say, suspicious, I don't want to use a word that is misleading, to be wary of this process of talking oneself into something, so that it can be illumined when it happens. Illumined with what? Seeing it inside. The immediacy of that, which has nothing to do with thought. It's not thought about oneself, it's seeing. Still the reverberation of talking oneself into something, a storyline about me or an image, the attachment to it. It can be seen. What this process is, I cannot explain any further. But it does happen in human beings. That capacity is there, and it manifests in a mind and body that is not anchored ferociously or fearfully, defensively to ideas about itself, but begins to question, and with the questioning, the breaking up of assumptions and ideas and the bubbling up of some real stuff. Including the fear of looking at how one is, how one talks, how one thinks, how one relates, the fear about that, or the whatever feelings come up, and not immediately then stop up the crack through which something has been allowed to appear, just because it feels so fearful or upsetting or disgusting. it wouldn't be disgusting or upsetting to see something about oneself if one hadn't cherished or still cherishes images about oneself that one isn't like that. That prevents touching the actuality of one's moment-to-moment thinking and reacting and living. It conceals that, and therefore we continue creating hurt, sorrow for ourselves and each other. So, what is sadness? Can one ask that question afresh as something permeates this body and mind that one has learned to call by that name, which makes tears well up, heaviness in the chest, in the heart, pain in the heart. I'm just picking a few manifestations. One can listen oneself to how this state that one calls sadness manifests in the body, and listen to the body. We have learned in the past, maybe at a very early age, to shut down feelings of sadness or anger or fear or pain. Because it seems that the brain has a mechanism that at a point where it seems too much to endure, shuts down the feelings. And amazingly enough, people grow up 20, 30, 40 years and may not have felt much at all in their life. Because shut down is very general, it's not specific usually. It's all over. So in doing this work, there is this seeming danger that with questioning and putting aside protective measures, protective images, long-learned defenses, putting aside meaning seeing them, coming in touch with them and questioning them, questioning their utility, their function. Or just sitting quietly, which makes for less defensiveness. There breaks open a vulnerability to pain, fear, sadness that one hasn't known before. And is the first reaction to clamp down on it again, not to feel it, because one has learned this is bad or dangerous to feel feelings? I've learned that, and have learned instead maybe to use our intellect. If one had something of an intellect, to hybrid that and get reward and acknowledgement and safety through intellectualism. So, coming back to feeling something which one has learned to call sadness. Not everyone has totally shut down, but that's the extreme. Feeling fear, feeling anger, feeling pain and sadness. Is it possible to not know it? Not know it in our conventional way, through labeling it, and with a label go all kinds of associations. How we feel about ourselves feeling sad, or how we feel about ourselves feeling angry or fearful. to watch those reactions to the word. It's only in the observing and watching and seeing that the strength, the power of these reactions can give way to more looking. How does it feel to be sad or afraid or in pain or in anger? If I don't use those words, I will deliberately put them aside. The language again is dualistic. But can it happen? We're talking about it and we're asking, can it happen? That there is sadness and the brain not immediately dominate, overpower the whole situation with knowing what sadness is, where it comes from, how too bad it is, feeling sorry for oneself, a victim. All the stuff that the brain pours out because it is an associative organ, connecting organ, connecting with past impressions, past knowledge, past feelings and emotions. Is it really possible to be in touch with sadness without knowing it? As for the first time, or fear or pain? If associations are furnished by the brain, can it be seen that this is association? What this reminds me of past sadness that is brought up as a memory, to see it's a memory, which can also elicit the feelings, almost as though something was happening right now. The memory can bring about strong feelings, strong emotion. Can they be felt without resistance? Who knows? One has to see whether there's resistance. And there is. We don't want to feel what is there. And the word, or the resistance to what is about to come up, is very habitual, very strong, but not outside the realm of looking and questioning. And if one sticks with it, one may find that the resistance and the idea about what sadness or fear or pain is much more painful than the thing in itself. Unresisted, unknown, but listened to, touched, felt, quietly, innocently as it were. The tensions in the body that are like braces against the feeling. When a wrist is broken or a bone is broken, the body, out of natural responses, sprints or splints. What is the word? Sprint or splint? Huh?
Splint.
Splints the hurt through tension, which is very intelligent. So no false movements aggravate the fracture. But the same with emotional pain and hurt. The body tenses up to splint, which is totally useless and adds to the discomfort. Can one notice that when it happens? Recently, when someone got very upset, I put my hand on the person's arm and I could feel ongoings inside that arm. So the person was lifting weights or pushing a heavy weight. Is it possible to so listen to what all goes on at this moment of feeling so hurt, so pained, so sad. All the complicating factors, the resistance, the knowledge. I know it, this is going to get worse, or it's not going to be over, or I shouldn't feel like this in the first place. This is not manly, this is not womanly. Doesn't go with my image, in other words. See, our talking about this and listening and looking may have something to do with seeing it for oneself. If it is used that way or listened to that way, then it can be very beneficial. But if it's just taken over as knowledge, then it's not beneficial at all, because knowledge does not help in seeing directly. But loosening it up, like plowing the hard, caked ground, plowing it, breaking up the clumps, so that rain and sunshine and seeds can sprout, can reach the dark niches and corners. So one thing is to really be with the feeling that has been triggered, has been evoked, and most of the time it is thought. It may be non-verbal remembered image, but without some memory in the process, these feelings like sadness, fear, anger, hatred don't arise. Again, don't take it on faith, but find out. And many people don't try to talk down to people. Sometimes people tell me it sounds as though we knew nothing and you knew everything. So we're sharing this. And yet, looking afresh at something we may have talked about and looked at for many times, may be right on, we'll be right there with it, right now. And in that there is energy, and I can't describe it, but people see it for themselves. So the one aspect is how to be, or to be unconditionally, vulnerably unconditionally with what thought has triggered, the feelings, the emotions, the physical pain, tension, pressure, discomfort in stomach, intestines, and heart, lungs, head, wherever. To be with that unconditionally, or let's put it as undualistically as possible. Can that be there as it is? With no one controlling or tinkering with it. That means a tremendous quietness, doesn't it? A silence to let be what is. The usual reactions that want to come up, they're seen. If they have come up, the results of the usual reactions can be seen and abate in a silent, quiet, motionless, listening, looking, feeling, in which there is no conflict. Because what is felt, listened to, or looked at is not something wrong. It's what is, this instant. It needs no judgment. If that could only be seen, what a relief. It needs no judgment. It needs seeing. Judgment has not changed a thing in human beings over millennia. And yet it's deeply ingrained. As one becomes more aware of what goes on, it seems as though perception and judgment are inextricably linked, which is not true. It's only that the gap between them is lost in the attention, in the awareness. But there is a gap. And can one live in that gap of looking and listening before the judgment arises? Or, if the judgment has arisen, before judging the judgment? So that the space quiets down and expands in nothing, in no thingness, in no meanness, no controller. And the uneasiness that comes up in human beings who have controlled themselves all their lives and lived in the presence of the elders who have controlled themselves all their lives, or if they have lost control, then they have been punished for losing control. This brings this uneasiness or insecurity, feeling of fear again. And if thought says you're out of control, then there's a reaction to that. Fearful reaction, but it's not being out of control, it's just what's there is there without control, without directing it, controlling it, suppressing it. Does that make any sense? One has to get into it, right? Maybe we're all in it already. Actually, when there's really this unconditional state of being, the pain, the fear, the sadness or anger, which is no longer known as that, and therefore not reacted to as that, then things change, they move. The fixed plates move and release energy. Which is energy of awareness, of wholeness. To be aware that this does not become a thought, a goal, something to attain, because then it is not a live process and it becomes a fixed thing which the I wants to have. Can one see that when it happens and not get trapped, tricked by it, and stay with what's there? Because there's no goal in time in this work, a goal in the future. There's only what is there now. The goal in the future is thought, which creates mischief throughout the organism. I should get that, I should have it, others do have it. But all that goes with such thoughts. Sometimes people say, I've been looking at this for a long time, but it doesn't go away. My pain, my sadness, depression, fear, anger. Then what is the quality of the looking? Is one using this word looking for thinking about one's state of being? Which is what we usually do. This is what the brain is programmed to do. A problem arises and it starts thinking. Of course, it already created most of the problems that we have to deal with, created through divisive thinking, and then more thinking to try to resolve the problem that was created by thought. So can one become more discerning about the operation of thought, and that thinking about something is not the directness of its being there, and felt and listened to and been in touch with. Thought may roam around someplace in the mind peripherally, but this thing is real, is there. Whatever thought has triggered in this body for decades, for centuries. So when this comes up, well, I've looked at it but it doesn't change, then what is this looking? To have some curiosity, not to throw in the towel or put blame on what one thinks is a method. But wonder, always, when something doesn't make sense, can wonder arise about what's going on. Wonderment, curiosity, which is never confrontative. Curiosity does not confront. It investigates, it goes into something. If I know something, then I may confront it or fight it. But if I'm curious about it, what is this? I think I know it, but let me find out firsthand. Then there's no confrontation and no resistance. So curiosity has its own energy. What is looking? And I may draw a complete blank. I don't know what looking is or listening is. And can one start with this, not knowing what it is? And there's some place in the brain, the files are clicking, well, let me find, maybe I can find what it is. Or is there really not knowing what it is? One has asked others, one has asked teachers, and all the answers are ominous or meaningless. So one doesn't know what it is. Can one start with that? Not knowing. What is the state of mind that doesn't know? It's sweet. The breeze, the sound of the plane. You say, well, wait a minute, you've got knowledge. No, these are just words. But there's something going on, isn't there? It's perceivable. Cool breeze. It's not the words. I don't know what it is, but it's there. All the ongoings in this body right now, it's there, it's alive. And some 45 people sitting here, it's alive, it's real. What is the state of not knowing? the state of listening and looking? Feeling, touching. Maybe tomorrow during the talk, it's too late for it today, we will get into why we get angry in the first place. Why are we afraid? Why do we get sad? Why do we feel pain? I don't mean pain if one falls and breaks a leg, but this immense burden of emotional, mental pain manifesting in the body. Why? What's at the root of it? Not just, I get angry so I'm with it and so it dissipates. Tomorrow it's there again and that's enough. It's never enough. Why? What brings it about? Why do I get hurt? As I get hurt. Why? When I don't know, I have to look and listen, don't I? We will end here for today.